we see two major trends in the industry. One is the rise of these big streaming platforms. So that's, Netflix, of course, which has now more than 180 million subscribers worldwide. But also Disney Plus, more than 50 million subscribers, and others. And these platforms are getting bigger and bigger. And they are actually built not at the expense of movie theaters so much, but at the expense of traditional television networks. So what we see that television networks are in free fall almost all over the world. That's the case in the US, definitely. That's also the case in France. So it was a little bit better during the lockdown because people had to watch TV to get the news, but the trend is there, and it's going to be further and further going. So that's the first trend. The second trend is the slow erosion of the theatrical market. So if you look at of course, the theatrical market is very variable. You have good years, you have bad years. So last year was a very, rather bad year in the US, -6%. Rather good year in France, +6%. But if you look at the long trend, you see that every year, on average, the theatrical market loses 1-2% of audiences, and you see the theatrical audience getting older and older. And actually, if you, watching the short video that you showed at the very beginning, it was quite telling. All the people you interviewed were like 50 or 50 years old or older. And why? Because it's 40% plus, more than 40% of the audience in France now. So it used to be, that the young people were driving the box office activity. It's not the case anymore.
Elizabeth Subrin, is the arrival of these streaming platforms good news or bad news for you?
Well, it's interesting. This is a conversation we've, of course, had for quite some time. In my last feature film, A Woman Apart, it had, it was a small independent film. It was, $500,000 budget, so teeny. We had a theatrical release just on the East and West Coast. It was small, and then it was bought by Netflix and Showtime. And I think, if it had been 10 years before, I would have been upset that it didn't have like a very wide release or something like that. But what was amazing about having it on these platforms is that anybody who wanted to see it could see it. So,
was there an uptick during lockdown?
Oh, of course there was an uptick. All of us were watching it. Social media was everyone sharing all the things that we were watching. Every single, art house cinema, every single museum, anywhere that was showing cinema was putting together programs of stuff that they could show us. There were things being streamed for free. So it was a very, very vibrant time in terms of watching online. But I think that what we were saying earlier about just the joy of a cinema and of cinema the screen encompassing us is something that is irreplaceable to watching, on a teeny frame.
But Julien Jourdan says it's irreplaceable if you're above a certain age.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know the numbers as well as you probably do, but in the US, the market for multiplexes is really directed to teenage boys. And I think they're probably also the kids who are least worried about being exposed to the virus. So I think that there are going to be a lot of people in the movie theaters, and including young people.